All right, thank you again for joining us today. This webinar is brought to you by Rescue, the behavior change agency. Rescue has spent over 20 years working to make healthy behaviors easier and more appealing. And since our onset, Rescue has been developing youth engagement and policy programs. Currently, we train over 2,000 youth annually. And outside of our youth engagement work, Rescue also works with government agencies and nonprofits to tackle challenges like tobacco, vaping prevention and cessation, substance misuse education and prevention, nutrition and physical activity education, and many other public health topics. You can learn all of this on our website at rescueagency.com. And now it's my privilege to introduce you to our speakers. We have Carly Hausbeck, who is currently the Associate Program Director for Rescue Agency. Carly leads teams across multiple states to work with teens on public health policy initiatives. She leads statewide youth programming and policy campaigns in tobacco control and nutrition. Carly has a Master's of Social Work with an emphasis on macro policy change from the University of Southern California. We also have joining us today, Tabitha Magabet, or Tab, as you might hear her referred to. Tab has several years of experience managing diverse projects that focus on reducing health disparities, integrating social justice principles into public health frameworks, and advancing health equity. Tabitha serves as our program supervisor at Rescue Agency, where she too leads transformative statewide youth volunteer programs and policy campaigns in obesity and tobacco prevention. So thank you both for being here. And to get us started, I will turn it over to Tab.
Thank you, Kimberly. And thank you all for joining us today to, learn how we can harness the power of our youth's voices. There's no denying that, youth activism is gaining momentum where we're seeing young people becoming more socially conscious and pushing for the change they want to see. Much of this activism, is fueled by social media, which has just evolved into a space where young people feel they can express themselves and their beliefs openly. We're talking from TikTok videos to hashtag movements and podcasts. Young people are expanding the ways in which they can speak out, be heard, and create a sense of urgency around issues that, matter to them. And the reason why we're all here today is because, we all want to be a part of that, right? By developing youth programs that tap into this surge of youth advocacy. The question is how, right? So engaging teens is not as easy as it seems, and just having them post on social media isn't enough. It's really, figuring out how to sustain their interest and engagement over the long term to achieve the desired policy outcomes. We all face struggles when creating youth programs. So in today's webinar, we're going to dive into the nitty-gritty and talk through those pain points and discuss common pitfalls when creating youth programs, because one of the biggest issues is that we keep using the same tactics, but expecting different results. So we'll share how to avoid some of those common pitfalls. We'll also discuss how to align your policy goals with youth programs, and what we here at Rescue have done to take a different approach to youth engagement and policy and really break the mold and create youth-led movements that are both effective and sustainable. So when we think about developing a youth advocacy program, we all tend to have like this specific vision of how we want the program to look, where we dream of, recruiting thousands of kids across our state who will be ready to take charge and action. We envision teens coming in interested in the campaign issue and immediately engaging their communities in conversations about it and posting on TikTok and Instagram about how the issue directly impacts them, their loved ones, and people in their communities, where they're just motivating and inspiring people left and right and go viral. We also dream of having youth show up to our Capitol as experts on the topic, speak at hearings, meet with their state legislators, and advocate for our policy issues. And then bring home a policy victory by having a bill passed. However, in spite of the good intentions behind implementing the ideal youth program, the reality is often different. In actuality, what we observe happening with a lot of youth programs is that youth are often recruited without being provided with proper training or opportunities for skill development. Training and empowering young people is not just a matter of giving them control to do what they want to do, but rather providing them with the necessary tools and training and guidance to unlock their full potential and really help them achieve things that they didn't even think were possible before. So it's important that we're distinguishing between, young people being in charge and young people, co-creating, because youth want to work alongside adult experts and have the opportunity to contribute to projects at the highest level. And, the worst thing we can do is leave them feeling alone to figure that out for themselves, as this tends to lead to like frustration and disengagement and loss of interest. And as a result, this is where we start to see fewer teenagers participating and struggling to stay involved in the program. And then to try to address it, now we're wasting resources on recruiting more youth or offering free lunches or gift cards, free laptops, anything our budget allows as a way to incentivize young people to participate, which can unfortunately have unintended consequences by undermining youth motivation. And so, as a result of this chain reaction that we see here, the work starts to lack a meaningful impact. So with our programs, we often tend to overemphasize youth engagement and leadership with the idea of wanting to be able to promote that teens are in charge of making decisions and running meetings. However, what our programs often fail to realize is that teens care more about the results and what they gain from their participation than being in charge. And this significant gap between the goals and values of the adults and the youth is where the problem starts. Because, as us adults, we tend to value engagement metrics such as attendance at meetings, participation levels, and decision-making abilities. And while these metrics may be important to us and our funders, these metrics don't, hold much significance for the youth. What young people truly value is impact. They really want to know that their time and energy went to, actually making a difference. And so because of that, it's really important that we have a shared understanding and definition of what impact and success mean before anything else. And this means, really working alongside youth to shape goals that are meaningful to both them and the program. And then by doing so, this is where we'll start to see those measures of success like attendance and participation happening organically. And even if we don't achieve a policy goal immediately, it's okay, because by linking youth actions to impact, we can create a sustainable youth program where teens not only understand the program goals, but are invested in its success, which is key.
And just like Tab mentioned, organizing and creating youth programs, and as many of us know, implementing these youth programs isn't easy, and they often don't lead to the outcomes that we want to see. And so it takes a real coordination and adult facilitation to make sure that our programs are operating efficiently. And so here at Rescue, we've developed a youth engagement framework that kind of outlines 4 things that we want to include in all of the opportunities that we're providing to our students. So I'm going to walk you through each of these. The first is lifelong skills. So when we're working with youth, we want to make sure as facilitators and as adults and co-creators, like Ted mentioned, that we're providing them with the opportunities to learn skills that they can take beyond our youth program, beyond their time in high school, with them truly for the rest of their life. Things like planning and decision-making, working with students to not just, hey, go do an event, but working with them to plan that event to be successful, making sure they understand how to make proper decisions to have a successful event, and not giving them total control over doing whatever they want, but working with them to make sure that that is successful. Also providing them opportunities to network, build relationships, build public speaking skills and leadership, things that they can take with them beyond our program that will help them later in life. The second element of our youth engagement framework is providing authentic experiences and meaningful work. This really gets at that impact point that Tab was making about making sure that the youth can see their successes and aren't just doing youth-focused activities that may not be correlated to a policy campaign. We want to make sure that they feel like they're making a difference. And so this quote kind of really exemplifies the youth in our programs feeling like they're able to accomplish things. So many youth I talk to when they're talking to adults in those networking situations are astonished that adults care about what they have to say. And so really making sure that they understand that this work is meaningful, that the work they're doing does matter, and providing them opportunities to showcase their work and see that meaningful work come to fruition. The third element is social fulfillment. It's really important that the young people that we work with don't feel like they're going at this alone. Policy change is difficult, and we know that it can be discouraging, right? If we're not getting policy wins every year. And so feeling like you're a part of a community and a community of people that care about these issues is really important and is really valued amongst teens this age. It's important for them to know that they aren't the only ones fighting the vape industry when they see all of their peers using vapes, right? They want to be able to be a part of a community that also values similar things. So connecting them to peers across their state, across their school, across their community that are also working on this is a really important element in Rescue's youth engagement framework. And fourthly, integrating tangible and short-term goals. Policy change takes time, right? And so we can't expect to have these huge policy wins every year when it comes to public health topics. So we want to make sure that we're implementing short-term goals for the students to accomplish along the way that are tangible. We want to facilitate opportunities for them to accomplish these goals. We don't just want to tell our students, okay, go out and pass this bill, right? We want to facilitate those opportunities with them. And like Ted mentioned, being co-creators, working with the students to lead these initiatives, but providing them the opportunities that incorporate all of these elements so that they can be successful, so they can feel their impact, and so that they can work towards skills that they'll take with them. And so here at Rescue, we utilize this framework in our involvement model, which is an award-winning youth engagement model that we use in our youth programs. Through involvement, we recruit and train and mobilize high school students to lead policy and advocacy campaigns in their communities. And the policy component is really important. All of the youth in our programs through the involvement model are working on policy initiatives. And so how does this work? Really, it starts by partnering with existing organizations or high schools that already have teens that go there every day. We're not going to go to the community fair and try to recruit teens on our own. We're going to go to the school where teens are at every day and are easily accessible. By partnering with us, schools also earn a financial incentive. Then we're going to train the students. We're going to go to the school, train them for about 4 hours on the knowledge they need to participate in the program, but also the foundational knowledge that we all know and are familiar with in public health. Things like health equity, things like why are we even working on policy change in the first place, right? We want to ground them in the reasoning why, and then show them how they can practically create change. After the training, we really work with the students to create campaign activities that they lead in their own communities, but that we help facilitate using that framework, right? We want to make sure that we're also providing them the knowledge and skills that they need to be successful. And a crucial element to our involvement model is our leadership teams. These are the students that go above and beyond and receive an additional level of training from our staff to take back with them in their communities and be leaders when our staff isn't at their community. Additionally, I'm not sure how many of you have texted a teenager recently, but I'm batting about 50-50 on my response rate. But because of our leadership team's relationships with us adults, they respond to me more frequently. I have a much better rate with those students because they know me. They know how many dogs I have. I know how many siblings I have and what they do for work. And we have that rapport and relationship. So we also have a level of engagement there that is higher than our other students in the program. The leadership team also is more connected, and often after our leadership team opportunities, I hear students say things like, we're just a big family, right? We're really fulfilling that social fulfillment element that we want to make sure is in our youth engagement work. And at the bottom here, we're providing year-round engagement. This is really important that we don't just go to the training and say, okay, go implement, right? We want to make sure that we are facilitating youth engagement opportunities as the adults and as the co-creators with that framework in mind so that they can be successful, so that they can see their impact. Like Ted mentioned, we don't just want them to measure their success based on the fact that they met, but really measure that success through what they're able to accomplish, create meaningful work. And we do that by providing year-round engagement and opportunities for our students, providing them the training that they need to be successful. And when we're talking about youth engagement, it's also important that we're integrating policy into our youth programs. So youth have to have a policy campaign to work on, and policy campaigns need folks to work on them. So when we're talking about setting up our youth engagement programs for success, oftentimes we see that the youth program and the policy campaign are kind of set up separately which is misleading and not going to lead us to the outcomes that we want. We often see that youth engagement programs are set up by different funding, different organizations, different leaders. And then on the other side, we have our policy campaign work that's worked on policy campaign goals and focusing on that specific policy initiative. But what this leads to is really a lot of misconceptions that we often hear. And the first misconception that we hear is that youth won't want to work on this policy topic or issue. Tobacco, substance use, that's really not flashy or attractive to the youth, and it's not what they're concerned with. But what we know is that youth really can get behind these issues if we connect those passion points, right? If we expose that the vape industry is targeting certain populations that these youth probably identify with, that's a meaningful and connected related issue for them. Secondly, we often hear youth won't want to work on this campaign for multiple years. Policy change takes time. They need something new and exciting. They have short attention spans. They want to make sure that they have a new idea every year to go on. But what we also know is that just like adults, youth value being subject matter experts. They value having the opportunity to go in and fine-tune their messaging, to talk about something and really know how to get the reaction from people that they're hoping for, to be able to work on something for multiple years and have multiple opportunities to speak to their experiences. And thirdly, youth need youth-specific roles or activities, right? We have the policy campaign over here because the youth need to do youth work. They're youth. They like to color and decorate posters. And so we're going to have them do youth work over here, and we're going to focus on strategic policy elements over here. And really what we're doing is we're discrediting youth, and we're not letting them live up to their potential. We know that youth can understand the strategic elements of a policy campaign, and by not providing them the opportunity to work on that, we're really missing out on providing them the opportunity to do that meaningful work, to give them those authentic experiences that allow them to feel like they're making an impact, which is what they want. Youth can tell if we're not giving them those opportunities or if they're just doing something to do something. They want to do something that's going to make a difference. And so even if we are successful in organizing our youth engagement program, we're using this framework, we set it up with the policy campaign, it's also important to make sure that our policy work and our policy campaigns are set up for success. And so we often see some policy pitfalls that I want to walk you through. The first policy pitfall that we can run into in policy campaign work is lack of a clear policy objective. So yes, we probably all want to fix the youth mental health crisis or take down big tobacco, but that's not a clear, reasonable policy objective. So instead of saying, I'm going to take down big tobacco, we're going to say, I'm going to implement or advocate for statewide comprehensive retail licensing, or I'm going to repeal preemption, right? We're focusing in and using our efforts more strategically to work towards a clear, concise policy. And so now we're going to walk through a quick example that falls into this pitfall. And as we're watching, listen for the clear policy objective. So from that video, we know that inactivity kills more Americans than drug and alcohol, and that they want to make physical activity more affordable. But what I don't know, without specifically looking up what the FIT Act is how they are making physical activity more affordable. Are they doing this by creating more access to sidewalks and safe streets? Are they making more access to recreational areas and free access to gyms? Are they increasing physical activity requirements in school? It's really not clear what the policy focus is just from watching this video. And secondly, another pitfall we often see is competing stakeholder agendas. So as we're starting a policy campaign, it's really important that we align with the other organizations and groups in our state that are working on these health topics. We're not the only groups and organizations that care about these issues, right? And so there are a number of groups, large to small, that are likely working on similar initiatives. And we want to make sure that we understand their timelines, their objectives, their goals, and what they're working on. The last thing that we want to do is work on a policy campaign for 5-6 years, build the ground level support, create key relationships with supporters in our community, make relationships with legislators to finally get a bill to be passed and hear from a key state agency or a national organization that they don't support this. We want to make sure that we're aligned from the get-go and that we're not competing. And the third pitfall is difficulty in showing tangible evidence of support. Policy change is difficult. It's an uphill climb. And so it's really important that we're able to show support along the way. We don't want to be left feeling discouraged. We want to make sure that we're able to measure our impact. We also want to make sure we're hearing from the voices that matter. We're hearing from our communities and the people that would be impacted directly by these policy initiatives. So here is an example. And as you're looking at this article, look for those measures of support. The article does show data and research and impact and improved lung function of smoking bans. But what the article is lacking, which is probably what bar and restaurant owners want to hear the most, is how this would impact their customers. Do their customers support this initiative? Hearing from their local community members would mean a lot more than hearing data from 7 states over 11 years, right? 11 years is a long time. And so by leaving out that tangible evidence of support, we're missing an opportunity to hear from real people with real experiences that would really be impacted by this policy. And fourthly, we often see that we focus on policy outcome first. We go straight to our key decision makers, straight to our state legislators, and try to build their support. When in reality, there's a lot of work that we can do at the local level and should do at the local level to prepare our communities and help educate and bring them along for the initiative. So I will pass it back over to Todd to talk more about that.
Thank you, Carly. So continuously facing these policy pitfalls that Carly mentioned can be discouraging, but there is a way to overcome these obstacles. And the way to do it is actually breaking free from this policy-centered mindset. I know it may sound counterintuitive, but the reason why is because at the end of the day, we can't control the policy adoption process. But so often, much of our timelines are centered around the policy itself, getting on the next city council's agenda, or when the vote will happen, or if an elected official will keep their seat to secure the support that we've garnered. While these factors are undoubtedly important, these are all things that are out of our control. And so by putting all of our focus on them, it hinders our youth programs and, more importantly, our ability to engage with the youth. And also, believe it or not, policy change doesn't start with legislators, but actually begins with a clearly defined long-term strategy that is tailored to educate and change individuals' knowledge about the policy issue first, while providing our youth with meaningful milestones that keep them engaged and motivated throughout. So here at Rescue, we've developed a model called Policy 360 that does exactly that, where we're focusing first on building education and awareness around the desired policy goal first, while providing youth with those meaningful opportunities throughout that show tangible outcomes and progress, again, impact. With our Policy 360, we start in this knowledge phase that you see here in this diagram on the right by getting a pulse on public opinion. Though we know the policy issue is something that, most people already support through our policy research, just because they say they support it when asked about it doesn't mean that they've been convinced that this is important enough to be worthy of their attention or ongoing support. So during this phase, youth are really taking an active role in working alongside us adults, conducting a variety of activities to engage community members in conversations about the policy issue and provide a clear call to action for the public to show their support, such as completing a survey or a photo pledge to generate, real concrete evidence that show that people care about the issue enough to take the time to do more than just sign their name or click a button. And the goal of this phase is not to persuade individuals that something is harmful to them, but really to gather and convince them that our policy is the right solution to a problem that requires their continued time and support. So for instance, young people may be, advocating for their school districts to adopt healthy hydration best practices in their school wellness policy, not to condemn the consumption of sugary sweetened beverages, but as a way to reduce childhood obesity and promote the habit of drinking more water throughout the school day. It's really, really important to gain widespread support before meeting with policymakers, which means we may spend a long time in the knowledge phase, which we do recognize can be an uncomfortable space for some. This is where we usually start to get a little uneasy, right, and shift in our seats because, we're questioning whether this is a good use of our time and resources to spend so much time changing individuals' knowledge. However, it is important to remember, though, that progress isn't solely measured by conversations with policymakers, and that building grassroots support is a key component of driving, long-term meaningful policy change. And so for us, once we've captured enough community interest to reach what we call our defined tipping point, we then move towards the left of the diagram into the policy change. And so this is where our youth are again creating activities to deepen supporters' involvement, such as leading days of action, while also beginning to engage with their local key decision makers, such as school board members or city and town councils, to educate them about the proposed policy solution. And throughout this phase, the youth and adults, again, we're still working hand in hand with youth meeting with their decision makers to share their personal testimonies, and where us adults are providing our policy expertise by working with the key decision makers on, revising their policy language or helping to navigate their policy adoption process. And once the decision point is reached, our efforts then depend on whether policymakers, support the proposed policy or not. If the policy is adopted, yay, we celebrate, by recognizing their efforts and begin, policy implementation. If the policy is not adopted, we jump right back into the cycle. And so our Policy 360 model really builds in goals that works towards our overarching policy goal that are, practical and tangible for you. That is something you continuously hear Carly and I say throughout, because it's just so important. Whether we're advocating for tobacco-free outdoor spaces or school mental health services or climate environmental education in schools, we really have to be realistic with our youth by setting goals and expectations that they can actually accomplish in developing clear calls to action. And so here at Rescue, we do that by creating measures of progress. And these measures are tangible actions that the public can take to show their support, like the surveys and photo pledges I mentioned earlier. And measures of progress not only yield a quantifiable outcome, but it really does add just this perfect amount of structure to our policy efforts, ensuring that youth can, see real progress that they've led or contributed toward achieving, our overarching policy goals, which Carly will explain further with our involvement model.
Yeah, so kind of taking a zoomed out look here, how does this work together? How does the youth program with the policy campaigns work, and what does that look like? So at the top here, you have our youth engagement program. This is the program that the youth sign up and join. This is how they connect to advocacy. Underneath that youth engagement program are the policy campaigns that the students are working on. So these are the initiatives, whether it's tobacco, substance use, mental health, that the students are working on to create that policy change. Underneath each of those campaigns are the measures of progress, like Tab mentioned, that they can work towards to create those tangible goals. These are provided by us as a team so that the youth can quantify and measure their impact. Each measure of progress is its own survey, pledge card, support card, and underneath those are the opportunities that the students can participate in to collect those measures of progress, which are facilitated by us adults. And so when we're talking about setting ourselves up for success, it's really important that youth are fully integrated into the policy work. So not having the youth campaign over here and the policy campaign over here, like we showed you in that one slide, but really having the youth at the center of the campaign work. Not that they're expected to organize themselves or know how to lead a campaign strategy, but really that they understand why we're leading the campaign strategy, that they know what the campaign strategy is and they're integrated into that. We also want to implement short-term goals. Just like we talked about with policy over and over again, this is difficult. Creating a statewide policy change is hard. And so we want to make sure that the youth have short-term goals that they can accomplish in a year, 6 months, in their time in our programs. And we want to create tangible, measurable outcomes. This is where those measures of progress come in. By creating those and providing the students the opportunity to collect or work on those, they have tangible, measurable outcomes that can quantify their success and that they can see the needle moving, even if we don't have a statewide win that year. And so as we move forward, we want to take a moment to walk you through some real examples of programs in the various states that we've partnered with, and how we've actually created policy change. And so the first example I want to talk to you about is Involvement New Mexico. And this is a program in New Mexico that's been around since 2012. And we partner with 16 high schools across the state and have trained over 5,000 high school youth throughout the beginning of the program. As you can see on the map on the right, it's really important that when we're partnering with our high schools, we're not just partnering in one area of the state. We're not just in Albuquerque or in one populated area, but we're really representative of our whole state. We want to make sure that our schools and our students look and feel like New Mexico, rural, urban, indigenous, representative of our community. And we also want to provide equitable experiences for those youth. Additionally, we're using that youth engagement framework to provide these students with lifelong skills, build social fulfillment, and provide meaningful work. Every year in Involvement, students volunteer over 2,500 hours, which equates to tens of thousands of dollars in hours donated for the state. And on average, students are participating in 14 opportunities a month. So this just goes to show that we are providing those opportunities all year, and we're not just expecting them to organize themselves, right? This takes real coordination and facilitation to make sure that youth are engaging in the opportunities, to make sure that they understand what they need to do to be successful in the opportunities, to make sure that they feel empowered to accomplish their goals and that they see the impact that they're making. And so one of the campaigns that they work on in Involvement New Mexico is tobacco focused and called No Minor Sale. So I'm going to dive into that campaign a little more as our policy example. When we started this campaign, the goal was to pass comprehensive tobacco retail licensing, as New Mexico was one of 13 states that didn't have tobacco retail licensing. And without a license, we can't hold tobacco retailers accountable if they're selling illegally to minors. We knew in New Mexico that 1 in 6 tobacco retail stores were doing just that, selling illegally to minors. And so we really utilize the Policy 360 model and our existing involvement program to generate support and educate our community. The first thing we wanted to do was educate retailers and build their support. If 1 in 6 retailers were selling illegally, that meant 5 out of 6 tobacco retailers were doing it the right way and probably wanted to hold those that were doing it the wrong way accountable. We also wanted to educate community members about out-of-date state practices. We know that the average citizen probably isn't keeping up with our tobacco policies or our tobacco policy landscape, right? So we want to make sure that they know that this is a concern and that we can really do something about it. We also, true to our Policy 360 model, want to conduct research. We want to understand how New Mexicans felt about this so we can understand where knowledge gaps are. We can better strategize for our policy campaign, and we can really move the initiative forward. So in addition to the on-the-ground work that the involvement students were doing, Rescue also supported with digital education. So let's watch this example.
I'm not just a shop owner, I'm a father. So when young people come into my shop trying to buy tobacco, it really hits home. It bothers me because about 1 in 6 stores sold tobacco to a minor this year. Sure, when adults legally buy tobacco, that's their business. But when minors try to buy tobacco in my shop, that is my business. Because the earlier you start, the harder it is to quit. So it concerns me that nearly 9 out of 10 tobacco users started under the age of 18. I'm supporting No Minor Sale because I want to be sure that other people are looking out for my kids the way that I'm looking out for theirs. Go to nominorsale.com to see how you can help keep New Mexico's young people tobacco free.
So true to the Policy 360 model, students built awareness, they built partners, and they collected messages of support, which all led to real advocacy on that wheel, where in 2020, students partnered with those key stakeholders in the state that were already doing this great work and participated in 2 days of action at our state capitol in Santa Fe, where they met with over 20 legislators to build their support for comprehensive retail licensing. And as a result, the Tobacco Products Act passed in New Mexico on March 4th, 2020. And what we know when we're talking about policy change is that it's important not only to celebrate those wins, but to also support those wins and make sure that we're continuing the education and implementation of the policies. So after the Tobacco Products Act passed, No Minor Sales supported the policy change. And in March of 2020, peak pandemic era, we hosted a virtual press conference with bill sponsors, involvement youth advocates, lieutenant governor, and the division that would be overseeing the implementation of the policy. In addition, we created retailer toolkits and really wanted to help retailers understand the new law. So I don't know if any of you, I'm sure you have read a bill recently, but they're wordy and difficult to follow and probably hard for tobacco retailers to really understand what they need to know. So we wanted to create simple Q&As and fact sheets where they can understand where they need to get a license, when they need to renew that, how much it's gonna cost them, when does this go in effect, all of those details. And to this day, we still support licensing efforts in the state by running promotional ads that help educate retailers about just that, the details of and logistics that will send them directly to the site where they can renew the license, where they can get a license, etc. And similarly, we also wanted to support digitally. So we had another video created that highlighted the new law.
Here in New Mexico, we're committed to protecting our youth. And starting January 1st, 2021, the Tobacco Products Act is in effect. Retailers must get a license and renew it every year to sell tobacco and vape products. This helps communities track who is selling tobacco products and holds them accountable. That means sales without a license will result in a fine. And remember, no minor sales, no exceptions. Let's work together to keep our young people safe and healthy. Visit nominersale.com for more details.
Awesome. So another successful policy campaign was our 24/7 campaign, which was part of our statewide youth-led program called Y Street, where teens successfully advocated for 100% tobacco-free and e-cigarette-free school environments. And so with Y Street, it's a statewide youth-led program in Virginia that started back in 2004. And, for almost 20 years now, Y Street has engaged high school students in advocating for policies that promote healthy lifestyles and create opportunities for Virginians to really have optimal health outcomes. The fact that it's still around today really shows just how much this program has anchored itself in the state and how much Virginia youth really enjoy being part of Y Street. Like Carly explained about our evolvement model, the staffing structure for Y Street is intentionally designed to support policy change. For example, we have campaign managers and field organizers who are locally based and work directly with youth by recruiting, training, and preparing Virginia teams to engage their communities and meet with key decision makers, and providing ongoing subject matter expertise and technical assistance. Just like we as adults have different members of our teams that specialize in different areas of expertise that all work together. In Y Street, we have a real partnership with our youth where, everyone's utilizing their knowledge and skills to lead to policy change, which our 24/7 campaign, shows proof of. So when the campaign started in 2014, most school divisions in Virginia did have existing tobacco-free policies. However, the issue was that their policies weren't comprehensive and contained many loopholes. It only addressed smoking. It didn't specify if the rules applied to staff and visitors, and it didn't extend to outdoor school grounds or off-campus school events. And on top of that, the majority of staff administrators and parents were unaware that the state law wasn't comprehensive. Only 20 out of the 132 school divisions in Virginia actually had 100% tobacco-free policies. So the objective was to have Y Street members mobilize their school communities to call for a comprehensive tobacco-free school law, while also working with individual schools to voluntarily adopt comprehensive policies to begin reducing tobacco and e-cigarette use on their school grounds. And so to support school divisions in creating an 100% tobacco-free environment, we developed here at Rescue a school model policy that they could easily adopt without having to go through the rigmarole of developing one on their own. And so to meet our policy goals and objectives over the course of 4 years, Y Street members collected thousands of measures of progress to provide their school community with not only a concrete way to show their support for tobacco-free schools, but also a compelling reason to speak up about the issue and get involved. They also organized over 200 school events to raise awareness and promote the new comprehensive tobacco-free policy, and led days of action such as Tobacco-Free Spirit Day, where they thanked their school divisions for going 100% tobacco-free and encouraged other school divisions to adopt a comprehensive policy statewide. We also ran a series of ads in conjunction with youth activities to raise mass awareness and really boost their on-the-ground efforts. And here's an example of one of the ads that we'll play. So as you can see in the video, our messaging focused on educating people about the state law's loopholes and what a comprehensive 100 tobacco-free school policy is. We also created ads that celebrated schools that adopted a comprehensive policy to encourage others to follow suit. Again, as you can see in the photos, the youth met with their school principals, they spoke at school board meetings and met with state legislators. And from that, their efforts generated thousands of earned media views. Their efforts came full circle when in February 2019, former Governor Ralph Northam signed the Comprehensive Tobacco-Free Schools Bill into law. The bill required all Virginia school divisions to develop and implement comprehensive tobacco policies, with the new law taking effect on July 19th, 2019. The policy victory was truly a huge game changer, not only helping to curb youth tobacco use in Virginia and promoting positive role modeling for our youth, but our youth efforts were also recognized in the CDC's best practices user guide. A lot of work, as you can see, went into the 24/7 campaign. The program also collaborated with more than 24 schools and trained over 2,600 Virginia teens on the campaign issues. Teens really got into the campaign, and those who were eager to do more and deepen their activism joined the leadership team that Carly talked about earlier. Overall, the youth contributed over 17,000 volunteer hours, demonstrating their commitment to the campaign and its success, and their ability to also work on the same campaign issue for multiple years when they, again, feel like they're making an impact.
So as we wrap up here, we want to highlight some key takeaways that Rescue really embodies in the youth engagement work that we do. We know that we need to be facilitators for our youth engagement program. We're not going to go in and train youth and just expect them to organize themselves or expect them to host a meeting and quantify that as success. We really want to galvanize our youth to create real change and for them to feel that and establish that work. So the first thing that we're going to do is work to provide opportunities that develop lifelong skills. We're going to work with our students to train them and equip them with the skills to be successful and utilize those skills that they can take with them later in life. Things like leadership, things like public speaking and decision-making, and being able to critically think about how to accomplish their goals. Secondly, we want to make sure that we're providing authentic experiences that feel meaningful to our students. We don't want to just provide students opportunities that are youth-led and youth-centered, that are youth-specific, that they don't feel like as meaningful. We don't want them to just be developing and coloring and wasting those resources and materials. We want to make sure that we're providing them authentic experiences that work towards policy change, that work towards work that is meaningful for them and that they can see how they're making a difference. They want to feel and be seen. They want to know that their voices are being heard. And so providing opportunities where they can present and talk to key decision makers and collect those measures of progress really allow them to feel like they are a part of something larger than themselves and that their voice matters. Thirdly, we want to establish opportunities for social fulfillment. We don't want anyone feeling like they have to take down the vape industry or the substance use problem on their own, right? We want them to know that they're surrounded by a community that supports them, that also believes in these things, especially as a young person when they're probably experiencing their peers using some of these products or being caught in these things. We want to make sure that they feel like they're a part of a community that is also working towards the same goals. So connecting them to their peers, working with them to see what folks in other parts of the state are doing, making sure that they know, even if they're in the northwest corner, that the southeast corner is doing the same work and that they're working together. We also want to develop short-term tangible goals. This is essential for the policy work to make sure that we aren't just feeling discouraged time and time again when our bills aren't being passed. We know that tobacco lobbyists and other lobbyists are real, right? They are powerful and we need to combat that, but that takes time. And so we want to make sure we're developing short-term tangible goals that they can accomplish in 3 months, 6 months, in a day at an event, collecting surveys, right? We want to set those benchmarks where they feel like they are meeting their goals and they're not just being discouraged from some of these corporations. And so with that, we hope that our presentation today was helpful for you, whether you have a youth engagement program or are working towards one. And we're also available to help you if you want to partner. So thank you for your time today, and I'll pass it back to Kimberly for questions.